and I was out. First punch hit my head on the ground, and they just started kicking, stomping on me, hitting me with the bats while I was completely on. So luckily, I don't remember any of it. I don't even remember getting punched. It was just like I went through a teleport of hell and just woke up beat bad.
This episode is brought to you by a very, very special brand called Memoir. What makes this brand so special is that it's jewelry designed for one simple purpose, which is to help us always remember the Savior. For years, the main outward symbols of discipleship have been things like a cross necklace or a CTR ring, and both are wonderful, but Memoir creates beautiful, faith-inspired pieces that give us more ways to express our discipleship. Each piece carries a quiet reminder of Christ's life and sacrifice, and it makes such a thoughtful gift, whether someone's walking through a really hard season or celebrating a sacred milestone like baptism, temple endowment, or a mission call. I have mine on right now. I have my disciple bracelet. I love it so much. I wear it every single day and I never take it off. It's more than just jewelry, it's a way to keep our Savior close and to wear a reminder of our faith every single day. So go to memorjewelry.com and use code COMEBACK for 10% off. Brayden, I am so excited to have you on the podcast. I'm coming into your story completely blind, which is exciting. And you just gave me
Oh,
you
okay.
gave me
Always
like a little teeny tiny like nugget just barely. And so I'm like, oh boy, this is gonna be a good one.
got it. Well, that's cool. That's exciting. Well, then, yeah, I guess you'll hear it.
Yes, I'm so excited. Well, Britt sent you off your gift. You picked it up. Did you get it
She
yet?
did put it in the mail. It's not here yet. It's not here yet
Okay.
because we talked just 2 days ago.
Disciple men's chain coming your way right here.
Love it. Love
Okay.
it for sure.
Okay, well let's go ahead and jump into your story. I'm so excited to hear it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And thanks again for setting this up. Your story is amazing, and the work that you've put into this is really cool. Uh, so yeah, just thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. So yeah, I'm Brayden. I was born and raised in the church. I've lived in Utah more than once. I've lived in California, Washington, Arizona. I've been all over the place. My parents just like the idea of moving. And a lot of people will ask me, did you like it? Was that hard? Growing up, it was hard, right? Every 3 to 5 years, you're trying to fit into a new clique, a new group of friends. And by the time you finally made yourself a part of them, you've got to do it all over again. And then obviously in high school, that gets real difficult when you're 14 and 15 and your insecurity's at an all-time high and you just want to fit in. So that will lead to a lot of what happened in this story. But I'm the oldest of 6 boys. I got 5 younger brothers. We're all real close. We're all type alpha personality. So my poor parents had to deal with that a lot growing up. We lived in Washington up to this point, and I had a great set of friends, great childhood up to that point, I would say. Nothing too hard. Family life was great. School was good. I was in sports. I had lots of great connections, but we moved to Heber City, Utah, right after my 8th grade year. But when I was there, like we still had they still had the cowboy parking lot at the high school where they kept it dirt intentionally, even though the school was brand new, so that people could ride their horses or bring their trucks and leave them there while they were at school. And that just
Oh.
wasn't our vibe.
Mhm.
Um, but that was a huge turning point for me because it was the first time when trying to fit into a new spot that I didn't fit in at all. And like I experienced, I guess you could say, bullying. I don't want to act like I'm some bully victim. Like it wasn't terrible, but it was really interesting and it made it difficult to find my spot there. So I found myself a lot of times eating by myself at lunch, which was new. And then at the same time, my family was going through a pretty difficult time where I had a younger brother of mine had to get taken away by the state to go to group home. And my father almost simultaneously lost his job because this was in 2008, 2009, and they had just bought this big old new home, right? So housing market crashes. he loses his job and he's unemployed for 9 months. And we just barely moved to this new place. And so my brother's gone, my parents are struggling financially, and so all this stress really caused a lot of negative energy at the house. So their marriage was on thin ice. I would say it was on a real thin line. And so that led me to not wanting to be at the house because unhealthily, as the oldest, I unintentionally carried a lot of that weight, a lot of that stress. So I would sneak out a lot. I started getting in trouble, doing little things, going out with a couple friends that I did get close to. We'd go toilet papering, just harmless prank stuff, right? But just a way to rebel expressively, I suppose. And the moral of this whole story really is you're going to be as bad as the ceiling in your environment will allow you to go. And luckily in Heber, there wasn't a lot of terrible things going on there. So it really was just us being goofballs. And so that was a very traumatic 2 years because I was taking care of my brothers. One of my brothers had to leave. I watched my mom have emotional breakdowns all the time. And that was very difficult, all while dealing with not having any social energy coming my way, right? So I was a very empty 14, 15-year-old, 16-year-old. So take that now, 2 years later, we moved to Arizona after my sophomore year of high school. And I didn't want that to happen again. So I decided that when I go that nobody knows who I am, I'm just going to be the coolest version of whatever group is there. I'm going to be whatever person needs to fit in. And I started to be a different person around everybody. And that meant lying about my past, my story, who I was. And I remember telling somebody that I lived in Fresno, California at a time, and he thought that was cool because he thought that was next to Compton, California. And so he thought that was cool because that meant I was from the hood, right? So he thought I was from some gangster neighborhood. And that immediately made me feel cool because now I'm from something that gave him a lot of respect to me about where I was from. And so I grabbed that and ran with it. So I started telling everybody that I was from Compton. And so because I started telling people that, they immediately saw me as a different version, somebody that came from poverty, from violence, from gangs. So I started creating stories. I started talking about friends that I had, people who I saw get killed, just to build this version of me that people respected. And whether it was respect as in they liked it or it was intimidating, I didn't care. I just wanted people to look at me as this bigger version of myself. And I think I did that. Looking back, it was probably to protect myself from all the emotional trauma that I just went through in Heber. You tell a lie enough, you start to believe it. And that's really what I did. And so I played basketball in high school, and there were some teammates of mine that were from Chicago, which is real in terms of coming from poverty, coming from gang violence, coming from scary places. And they moved to where I lived in Arizona to get away from all that. But their personality was like mine. They liked the respect, they liked the energy that people gave. And so when people found out that there were these hardcore thugs coming from Chicago to play basketball with us, the first thing I thought of doing was presenting myself as one of them. And I remember I went straight up to this kid and introduced myself and said, "Hey man, I'm looking for people to go steal bottles with for parties. Would you ever want to go?" And that was the way I broke the ice with this guy. And he went, "Oh, okay, yeah, I don't need to do that. I got a cousin who just gets it for us, but give me your number, man. Let's talk sometime." And that's how I broke the ice and got in with these guys. And playing basketball, we got real close, but then after graduation, I started spending a lot of time with them. And mind you, I'm still going to church. I'm still in young men's. I'm still prepping for a mission, doing all the things that I'm supposed to do at home, all the while now when I'm not at home, I'm party, smoker, drinker, gangster type of personality. And started enjoying the camaraderie, the brotherhood that I started to build with these guys. And I'm diving into this deeply because a lot of people ask, like, how did you go from Eagle Scout, young men's president type stuff to prison like so fast, right? And so this is how, right? I never had friends ever tell me that they loved me. I never had friends that like hug me, right? Now you don't get that when you're in middle school, so I'm not trying to sound like woe is me, but the first time I ever had a friend that wasn't my brother, like honestly tell me that he loved me was one of these guys when I did a favor for him and his mom one time. And he just straight up told me, like, bro, I love you, Brayden. Like, you are so important to me. When I was on this, teeter-totter of should I keep going to church and being with my family? Should I go all in on this lifestyle? That was kind of the weight that pulled me fully over into that life because there's still crap going on at my home. It was a pretty broken home.
Did you not feel like there was the option to have better friends? Like, did you just feel like like a better group of friends? And it's like, for me, I don't know, like I've interviewed so many people on this podcast, and me myself was such a rebellious teenager that it's hard to be like, well, why don't you hang out with better people? Because it's like, now knowing what I know with my own experience and all the people I've interviewed on the podcast, it's like these are good people. They
Yeah.
are, but like they just, so I don't want to like put them in a box of like the
Yeah.
bad kids because maybe they're, who knows? Like maybe they're gonna come on the comeback podcast one day. I don't know. But
Yeah. It's a great question. And some of my best friends were from church, but they were also like me, where they still smoked, they still partied, but we're up there blessing the sacrament. Although 2 nights ago we were hammered, right? So it was so there were a small group of people in my seminary classes in our stake that were really really good and didn't get into that trouble, but I didn't get along with them. I didn't really know them very well. The people that I hung out with from church who were active, like I said, went to mutual every week. They were like me, and it wasn't that I didn't feel I shouldn't have spent more time with them. I just enjoyed both, and but the idea of this lifestyle that was kind of intimidating and scary was a little more, I guess, just attractive to me, if that makes sense. That's a great question because that's a question I get asked too. Is like, how did you go from hanging out with these people to these people? Like, they accepted me, like they brought me in, and they showed me lots of love and respect, and because authenticity and loyalty was a huge deal, and you can say anything about gangs, loyalty is something that they're all in on, and if you're one of them they treat you
right.
like you're one of them, and that was so, like I said, attractive and enticing to me. So that's a great question. Fast forward maybe 6 months after graduating high school. I'm still going and seeing the bishop missionary prep, even though in my head I have no clue. I'm only doing it because it's what I'm supposed to do. I don't know if I'm actually going to pull the trigger and go on a mission. And the only person that knew I was living both these styles of life was my bishop. I was completely honest with him always. Although my parents, they didn't know I was drinking. They probably had inklings, right? They're not, parents aren't dumb. But I never told them. It was never confirmed. If they ever asked, I lied. But my bishop, I told him that I was drinking, I was smoking, doing all these things, and I respect him and I appreciate him for that because he never judged me. And it got to the point where he was starting to ask me to give that up and choose to really submit papers to go on a mission. And it was really difficult for me because I knew that meant I would have to leave this lifestyle that I knew was bad, but was just too exciting and I enjoyed it too much. Because, you grow up your whole life and your parents say, oh, drinking is bad, people who party are bad, 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 bad. But then, like you just mentioned, they're not bad people. They're really
Right.
not. They just have slightly different values. So they do things that we believe are wrong, but they're great people. They're respectful, they're nice, they have good family values, they just do other things. So that was very confusing to me. that I thought that doing these things make you unhappy, make you bad, but they're not. And so I told my bishop, I'm not ready yet. I want to wait. And once I made that decision, I started really getting involved in the things that they were doing, these friends of mine, to the point where, and to be kind of blunt, robbing people, not innocent people, but other people like us who sold drugs, who did bad things. You know, we would never do anything to an innocent person. And this started happening a little bit more often to where I felt like my safety was compromised. So I went and I bought a gun myself. And they had guns, and so now I had one. And so because I had one, I felt more confident in going with them to doing these things. And it's a small town down there where I was living, and so word gets around that there's this white dude hanging out with all these thugs, stealing people's drugs, stealing people's money, stealing people's guns. And it's this white boy from Compton. Again, because I'm still lying to everybody, telling people that's where I'm from. And so there was a lot of noise around the city about this group of people that were doing some pretty gnarly things. And I remember there was another huge turning point for me where I got called into my bishop's office, and he sat me down, and it wasn't like, "Hey, how you doing?" It was serious, very focused. He didn't have very much emotion, and he looked me dead in the eyes and he said, "Brayden, it's time. And I need you to listen to the words of my mouth as if they were the voice of Christ himself, that you need to serve a mission and you need to get rid of and put away what you've been doing for the last 2 years. It's forgotten, it's forgiven, it's gone. It's time to serve a mission. The Lord needs you to serve a mission." And it hit me so hard. And that was on a Sunday. And I went home and took it real to heart. And I didn't talk to my buddies for a few days. And then I go to Institute on Wednesday, and my stake president is there. And he pulls me aside and asks me to talk to him in the bishop's office. And it was almost frame by frame the exact conversation. We sat down. He didn't have like, "Hey, how's it been? How's life?" It was, "Brayden, it's time. It's time to put away everything you've been doing." And he said the exact phrase. He said, "I need you to treat the words that come out of my mouth as if they were the mouth of Christ. The Lord needs you to serve a mission.
Wow.
It's time to move forward and give all this stuff up." And it was so powerful. So powerful. And I believed it. I believed it. It was strong. I felt it. So for a week, I didn't message. I didn't answer any phone calls. I didn't go out. I made the decision, okay, he's right. It's time to give it all up. I'm going to cut everybody off. About a week later, my phone's blowing up. People are calling and texting me like crazy. And finally, one of them that I was more close to was like, "Hey, you're doing your thing. I get it. We all need space. How about you and I, just us, we go and hang out for a little bit. Nothing crazy, just a little party, a little kickback is what it was called, where it's not a lot of people." And I was like, "You know what?" He was like, "You don't even have to drink, whatever. I just want to see you." And I was like, "Okay, I'll just drive. I'll be the driver, right? You get drunk, I'll be the driver, right?" So I go, and we go to this party. Obviously, I drink, yeah, because you're not going to be around that when you're so used to it. But the home that we were at belonged to some people in other groups that weren't too fond of my friends. They didn't have any qualms with me specifically, but they did with them. But everybody knows I hang out with these people, and my friend needed to leave to go pick up some other friends. So he had my car. So I'm at this party, and I can tell the energy's getting a little not good. And so I think it's time to leave. And there are these 3 girls that I know that they said they would take me home because my friend wasn't back yet. So as we're leaving the house, this other girl comes out and starts fighting these 3 girls for no reason. And it's probably just because drugs and alcohol or whatever. And I'm freaking out, but I don't know, everybody likes to record fights. So I pull out my phone and I start recording it because that's what you do. And then the huge group of guys come out with bats, sticks, and like baton type stuff.
Oh my gosh.
And that's when I realized, oh, I'm screwed. Like I know exactly what's about to happen. So I put my phone down and I'm like, I'm leaving, guys. Like I was leaving. That they're taking me home. I'm gone. Like I'm not causing any problems. And they're like pushing me back, and I turn around to look towards the car, and then all of a sudden I wake up and I'm in these girls' car, and my jaw's broke. My head got a huge cut open on my head. I got scrapes, bruises, cuts all over. Not like cuts as in slices, but just like scrapes on my chest, on my stomach, on my arms. And apparently the story goes that they told me was right when I turned around to walk towards the car, one of the guys came up and just punched me from the back, and I was out. First punch hit my head on the ground, and they just started kicking, stomping on me, hitting me with the bats while I was completely on. So luckily, I don't remember any of it. I don't even remember getting punched. It was just like I went through a teleport of hell and just woke up beat bad. And basically, one of the girls jumped on me to stop them, or they probably would have beaten me near to death because they're all on cocaine and fired up, and they hate the friends that I'm with. And they're like, "Hey, we got their boy. We're gonna send them a message, right?" And then I was just the guy for it. So they drive me home. I let everything out to my parents. I tell them everything because how can I hide that? And I come clean. And that was like, I thought of my bishop. I thought of my stake president. Like, man, it's like they knew. It's like they knew if I went out again, something like this would happen. And so, same thing. I don't talk to anybody for a whole week, and I'm just trying to stay at home, focus on myself, focus on leaving it all behind. It was like rock bottom, biggest wake up call I could have had. And I get another message from the same friend because he's been texting me all week, like, I'm so sorry, I should have been there. This is my fault, blah, 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 blah. And he convinced me to go out again. And so I go out again, and we're just hanging out, and just thoughts of everything that had happened the last couple of weeks really filled my mind with a ton of anger and vengeance. I'm in pain. My head hurts. My body hurts. And I look at him. I'm like, dude, I'm angry. Like I'm so hot right now. And he was like, yeah. I was like, yeah, dude. I want to go make some noise. Like I can't believe what they did. Blah 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 blah. Right? Just really upset. And I'm 19. Just so that people know, I'm 19 at the time. And he was like, all right, well, let's go do something. And so we get in the car. Mind you, I have a gun. He has a gun. And we're driving back towards the house there where I got jumped. And we don't know what we're going to do. We're not saying what we're going to do. We just know we're going to go do something. And we drive by the house. We both look, and he goes, okay, turn around. And I'm like, okay. And I turn around. He grabs his gun, grabs my gun. And as we drive by, he puts both hands out with both pistols and starts to pull the trigger. But the gun's jammed, both of them. And it was like one more last opportunity for me to just cut it off. And like I swear I heard the voice like, Brayden, don't you dare turn around, go home now. And all the while he's like fixing something. He was like, all right, I got it. Turn back around, let's do it again. And I chose to do it again. And sadly, this time the guns did not jam. And 15, 16, 17 bullets went through the house where at this party that I was at just a week before. And we run home freaking out because we had never done something to that level before. It was always just grabbing dudes, hitting them, stealing their weed or whatever. Nothing crazy. I mean, that's still crazy, but nothing like this. We go home, we're freaking out. We decide to lay low for a couple weeks. But, I mean, it's only a matter of time because it's a small city. I was just assaulted there a week before. People knew, everybody knew what happened because everybody talks. And inevitably, 2 weeks later, I'm walking out the front door, and there's two officers with a detainment, warrant. And it was just, that was it. They knew, they told me they had all this evidence, and so I admitted it, right? Told the truth. So, yep, it was me, it was him. I was driving, it was my gun, he did it. And I mean, there's nothing I can do to convince you otherwise. I'm not going to try and act like. And I figured, well, I'm here. I might as well start being honest. And so I told the truth. So they took me to jail, and it was a very surreal experience. And to kind of give people an understanding of still how airheaded and how dumb I was, thinking that this was all cool. I was in the police car getting driven to the jail, hoping that people would see me because it's like a badge of honor. Like, hey, I'm going to jail. Like I'm real, guys. I'm a real thug. Like that's how still oblivious and arrogant and ignorant I was as to what was really happening. And then the wake up call came when I get in jail and I know I'm not going home. And I get this discovery packet saying, hey, you're facing 10 to 15 years. Like, honestly, you could get 10 to 15 years for each bullet that they find. And so that was scary. Super, super, super scary. So I was in jail for 2 months. Obviously, I'm at the point where I can't hide anymore. I can't pretend to be somebody I'm not anymore. It's just me, the law, my family, and God, if He so chooses to still be part of me, right? And those are my thoughts. And when I was in, my parents could have bailed me out, but they decided not to, and I'm glad they didn't because it allowed me to not learn my lesson because I'm going to need a lot more to learn my lesson from something that terrible, but to give me time to ponder, I suppose, and really try to understand like how severe it is of what I've done. And I'm very glad they did that because those first 2 months I was in there was very helpful. It allowed me to see a lot, specifically what the potential was for me in impacting men in there. And I'll give two quick examples. And so there was this gentleman, I don't remember his exact name, but he's in his 40s. He had already done 12, 15 years before. Now he's in prison again for drug trafficking. And so he's about to do 5 more years once they transfer him to the prison. And it was only maybe a year separation of when he had just been released. But he had kids, he has a wife, and there's a TV in the big main area room where all the inmates gather. And the movie Pearl Harbor was on. There's a scene where the main character and the girl that he's with are dancing, and I'm looking at this guy and he's watching it, and I can just tell he's really feeling a lot of pain, emotional pain. And I've been blessed with like a little bit of discernment. And so I walked up to him and I put my arm around him and I was like, come on, because you can't cry in jail. Yeah, you're not allowed to show that emotion around the other inmates. You get beat up for it. And I saw that he was on the brink. And if anybody saw that, that'd be bad for whoever saw because he probably just beat them up for seeing it. And so I pulled him into his cell and I closed the door and he just broke down crying right here in front of me. I'm just a 19-year-old kid and he's this Mexican gang guy and he just starts crying and he finally gets ready and he starts explaining like I have my wife. I just barely finally got to see her again. I have a 16-year-old kid who I miss his entire childhood growing up, and told me this sad story. And, then he collects himself and he puts his hand up on my shoulder. He was like, there's just something different about you, man. I don't understand what it is, but there's something different about you. So I appreciate this. And he collects himself. We walk out the cell and never talk about that ever again, right? Ever. And that was interesting to me. And then not very much long later, there's this gentleman, kind of a similar story. He's been in the juvenile system his whole life. He's served 2 prison bids already, one for killing somebody, and now he's back again for another murder charge. And he's on the phone, and he's screaming at whoever is on the phone. And he slams it, hangs it up, and everyone's like, let's just pretend like we weren't listening to what he was saying. Let's get back to our business. And then he goes, McKnight. And I look up and everyone looks at me and he like signals me to come into his cell. And usually that means fighting. And so I don't know what I did. I don't know why he's singling me out, but maybe just because I'm the young, vulnerable kid. He's like, I got to let my steam out on somebody, so it's going to be him. But I can't say no because then I'm a punk and then I'm going to get beat up anyways. They're going to steal my stuff. And so I follow him into the cell. We close the door and he puts toilet paper over the little windows so you can't see, so the cameras can't see. And I'm fists ready because I think he's going to turn around and we're going to start fighting. And no, he turns around and he just starts bawling. And he tells me the story about how his son got in a crazy motorcycle accident and is in a coma and has potential brain damage where they feel like he's going to just be on life support. And it was the person he was talking to was his father-in-law, saying that they were going to decide if they needed to like pull the plug or not. And he's just bawling to me. And he just goes, this is the first time in my life I've been scared. And I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. He's like, what am I supposed to do, Brayden? And I look at him. Again, this guy's in his 50s. I'm like, why are you asking me? Like, I'm a 19-year-old kid who cannot relate to you whatsoever. Why are you asking me? Like, this is what I'm thinking in my head. And so I just ponder and I go, dude, I don't know what you're supposed to do, but there's somebody who does. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, dude, God is the only person that can help you in this scenario. And he's like, nah, dude, I don't do that praying stuff. And then so I asked him, I was like, so then why'd you bring me in here? Why did you ask me to come in here and you asked me for advice? Like, there's a reason you did. And I was like, I think God wants you to pray. I think he finally wants you to talk to him. And so we got down on our knees. I prayed first to kind of show him how it's done. And then he prayed. And he was like flat on the ground. And he basically was just, it was extremely humbling to see this man lower himself all the way to the ground and just pray and just let out everything for like 15 minutes. And it was one of the most spiritual experiences I'd ever had. And he gets up, we hug, he collects himself, we walk out. And like I said, we never talk about it again, right? And that gave me a huge understanding of what the possibility I had to give to people in there was. I'm not here to preach, but if I can be a light in a place of darkness and plant some seeds, that's what I'm going to do, right? And so eventually I get bailed out. I move up to Utah with my grandpa while we're fighting the case. And it gets to the, fast forward 6-7 months where I get a call from my lawyer and we're hoping that I can like get probation. I don't have to go to prison because it's my first time. I'm a young kid. I have lots of great support. I've never gotten in any trouble. And I get a call from my lawyer saying, hey, they let him go because he got arrested as well. They let him go. There's not enough evidence to put him there except for your word. So they can't convict him, which means you're the only suspect now and you admitted it. So you're going to have to go to prison. Like, there's no chance that you're going to get probation anymore. Right. And she said, so the prosecutor said you can sign a plea agreement and the minimum sentence would be 3 years. The maximum would be 7, and that's up to the judge. But you would sign that you'll do whatever the judge says. Or we can go to court and try to fight it. And she was like, I'll do everything I can to fight it. Like I said, you were attacked the week before, so you're probably concussed. We can use that. We have a lot of things that we could use that maybe a jury would be on your side. And if you win, nothing happens. You're free to go. Nothing's on your record. But if you lose, you get the real sentence of 10 to 15. You don't get the plea agreement anymore. And she's like, I can't tell you what to do. I'm only here to support you in what you choose to do. We have 3 days to let them know what we're going to do. So you got to let me know. You got to choose. And so I hang up and I just fall on the ground, bawling, right? It's just a scary moment because like how are you supposed to decide that, right? And so I called my dad and told him everything that I just heard and vented to him. And it's a really cool parallel and unintentional. But I basically told Dad, I was like, Dad, I'm extremely scared. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I was like, what do I do? He was like, how am I supposed to tell you what to do? He's like, obviously I don't want you to go to prison, but I also don't want to tell you to fight it and then you lose. And then now because I told you to go to court, you're gone for 10 or 15 years. Like, I can't live with that. And he was like, but somebody does know what you're supposed to do. And I think it's probably time you go pray and talk to him. it was just a cool parallel between that gentleman and then, me being in basically the same place as him. So the next morning, this was in Provo. So my grandpa lived right across the street from the Provo MTC temple. And so I get dressed up in church clothes and I walk across the street and I'm just kind of walking around the temple, and there's a tree on the east side that was kind of surrounded by bushes, a big evergreen tree. There's a little slot where you could walk in. And so I walked in, and it was like I was in my own little room, and nobody could see me. I couldn't see anybody, but I'm right there behind the temple on temple grounds. And so I just got down on my knees and I just poured out my heart, just apologized for everything, let it all out. And finally got to the point where I was like, okay, what is it that I'm supposed to do? Like, whatever you say I need to do, I will do. And if I need to go to prison, I'm willing to go. I deserve it for sure. Like, you gave me every chance to not, and I still chose it. So I will go. But do I take this plea agreement or do I go to court? I don't know. I can't make that decision. So I stayed there and I just waited and I waited and I waited and I waited. And I told myself I'm not going off of a potential thought. Like this has to be as clear as day. Like I'll wait here all day. And what felt like an hour, but it's probably a lot less, my mind started wandering and like I couldn't hold focus. So I started humming the EFY medley, or like the Army of Helaman song, because that's my favorite primary hymn. And I was humming it, and when it got to the point where it says, "And we will be the Lord's missionary to bring the world His truth," I started singing out loud. But instead of saying we, I said I. I don't know why. And I said, "I will be the Lord's missionary to bring the world His truth." And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And basically I heard, sign the plea agreement. You need to go to prison because there's men in there that you can impact that you wouldn't be able to touch if you don't go. And it was as clear as ever. And the feeling of fear was gone, and it was just peace. And I was very happy, very scared still, just in terms of like nervous, but like the fear of the unknown, that was gone, right? And I said, okay. And so walked home, called my lawyer, said, all right, let's do it. Called my parents. They obviously didn't like that answer. They were hoping I'd get the answer of go to court and you'll win. Like that's what they wanted. They didn't believe I should go. But obviously, who wants their son to go live in that place? But it was very telling that that's what I was supposed to do. And so I signed the agreement. I go right back to jail, right back to county jail, which was tough because, I was released in March and was out until November. And so then I had to go back willingly. And that was difficult, but it was with a complete different mindset. It was like, okay, I know what I'm doing and I have a purpose now. So I'm here. But it was really cool because the night before, my parents sat down with me with my patriarchal blessing, and just we went over it together. And there's a part that talks about my mission, and it specifically says that as long as I remember, God and His Word and His teachings, He will keep me safe spiritually and physically. And it said that word for word. And my parents were like, we're holding Him to that, but we're holding you to that. That it is your responsibility to remember Him and to remember His teachings so that you can come home safe to us. And I said, okay, I promise. Like I love that. And so every step I took forward from that point, moving on, was I'm trusting you. You promise you'll keep me safe. Like let's do this together. And so yeah, going back in with a purpose. And so it gets to the point where I'm getting sentenced, which is about a month after. And so I'm expecting 3 to 7 years. I'm praying, we're all praying for the minimum 3 years, because with time served and good behavior, you can get off a little early. And it would be close to about 2 years, right? So 19-year-old going away for 2 years, you put it together. It's like, all right, this is my mission. Not traditional, and I'm not trying to compare it to any young man who stayed worthy his whole life and willingly served a mission. I don't want to put myself on their level, but it was kind of cool to see the parallels there, that He was giving me this millionth chance. And so we go to sentencing, and we're all praying for the minimum of 3 years. And without getting into a crazy story, I ended up only getting sentenced 18 months.
Wow.
And it was a real crazy miracle because it was something in the plea agreement that rarely gets used, but the judge basically said, I just don't believe you going to prison is what's best for this scenario. He had a stack of letters of recommendation from almost 100 people, is what my parents said, that sent letters in. He just said, I don't think this many people are wrong about you, but if you're ever back here, you will not get this chance again, right? He's like, so don't make a fool out of me. And so he gave me 18 months instead. And so in the end, I would end up only having to serve 14 months after good behavior and time served already. So that was a huge relief. That was like, okay, so here I am. I only got 14 months to go. That's easy. I was locked in. I was all in on my relationship with Heavenly Father. And a lot of people will ask, like, how is it in there? It's exactly how you imagine. It's as violent as you would think. Everything that you think I saw, but it's not as fast paced as the TV shows or movies present it to be. They make it seem like it's like that every second of every day. So I tell people it's really 70% boring, 20% extremely dangerous, and 10%, for lack of better terms, fun, right? Because you build relationships and
Yeah.
you find ways to enjoy yourself. So the first place I went to, I was only there for a month, but I remember going there like trying to figure out like what should I do? How can I be a missionary here? I had all these expectations and questions of how I could be of impact. And I remember one day I'm hearing on the intercom like, oh, Catholic services report to the library in 10 minutes, or Baptist services report to the library 10 minutes throughout the week, and about almost a dozen other denominations. And so I was waiting for, LDS services maybe, and no, didn't happen. So I went and I asked the chaplain, I said, hey, do you ever do LDS Mormon services? And he's like, we used to, but people stopped coming, and I didn't want to keep asking these people to come out here for nobody. So I was like, well, I want to do it. Can you get them to come? He's like, I can't have them come for just one person. It's like, okay, so how do we get it set up? He's like, well, you need to write a letter of request, and you need 3 other people to write a letter of request. And if you get 3 other people to do it, then I'll get LDS services back here. And I was like, boom, my first assignment, right? So I sent a letter of request, and then there's a time when I'm reading teachings of the presidents of the church, Lorenzo Snow, and a gentleman walks up and he says, that's some interesting literature you have there. And we had a conversation. He was an ex-Mormon growing up, and he had never met anybody here who also had that faith. So we just got to talking, and I told him, hey, we're trying to get LDS services back here. Would you do it? And he's like, nah, I'm black, so I can't be the only one going. I need you to convince another black guy to come first. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, why don't you do it? He was like, this is not my thing. He's like, if you want us to go, you got to do it. I was like, okay. And so I played basketball. So I used basketball as my way to meet other guys of that culture and build relationships, and convinced one of them to go just out of spite because it was a way to get out of the heat and get in an air-conditioned room, because we're in Arizona, right? It's middle of this. It's very hot. Even in the winter, it was hot. And so he signed up. So that was 2, and I needed 1 more. And I developed a real close relationship with this kid named Smokey, and found out that while he was in prison, he was my age, and while he was in prison, his dad died, so he didn't even get to be there for his dad's funeral. And it's a real sad story. And he would slowly ask me questions of my faith, not like intentionally to want to learn about the church, but just about God and post life. And one time he asked me if he'd ever see his dad again, I thought. And there's a chapter in the teachings of Lorenzo Snow that talks about eternal families. And so I highlighted that chapter, gave it to him, had him read it, and he read it, loved it, and he wanted more, and he ended up reading the whole book. And then I went and I used that opportunity to challenge him and ask him to come to LDS services with me. I was like, if you like that, man, you got to come and learn. And he did. And so he sent in a letter of request. So the chaplain said, okay, I'll send it in, and somebody will be here this next Thursday. So like a week later. And that was awesome. And 3 days later, I get transferred to another facility. And when I tell this story to missionaries, they're like, "That's exactly how it happens." Yeah, investigator, we set up a baptism day or whatever, and we don't even get to see the result. So I have no idea what happened. I have no idea if they even went, if they did, if they loved it. No idea. But all I know is I did what I was supposed to do there because I was only there for a month. Then I got transferred to a very, 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 very dangerous facility that is now closed down because of a huge riot where they set the place on fire. Multiple officers were
Yeah.
killed. Um, and I was there. So I get transferred there, and because I told the truth, I'm labeled a snitch, right? And that's some places care more or less about that. This place did. And without going into it all, basically my life was in danger and I had to be put into solitary confinement to protect me. And I was there for 11 weeks in this
Oh,
cell, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, you'd think it was awful, but it was actually one of the best things for me because I had a Bible, I had a Book of Mormon, but that was a time where I got a lot of alone time. I read the entire Bible. I'd never done that before. I read the four Gospels very intently, and it's really where I was able to meet God, like on a personal level. And I could have done my entire time in that room, 100%. It was controlled. It was under my rules, my schedule, and it was just a very spiritual room. But it was necessary because it prepared me for the last half of me being there. And so 11 weeks later, I get transferred to a new place. And that's where I ended up spending the rest of my time and where I saw the majority of the things that you would see, people getting terribly hurt, very violent. And, but again, I was able to be used in a very planting seeds way. And I'll give just a couple stories. There is a there's a young kid. His nickname was Ice Cream. He was a couple years older than I was, and he had a hardcore heroin addiction, and it was really bad. And his withdrawals were aggressive. If he went more than 48 hours, he was throwing up, and it was really bad. And the drug dealers fiend off of that, right? And so they're like, "Oh, you need some help? Here you go, here you go." So he was in a ton of debt and he couldn't stop or else he thought he was going to die. And some people in there do die from withdrawals just because there's not enough other nutrition to keep you healthy. There was LDS services at this place already, and there's a group of Christian brothers that I made a group with that we would do every Thursday. We'd have, little lessons that we would teach to the other inmates that would come. It was really cool. But this kid in particular, I spent a lot of time with because I just related to him a lot. And I remember I was prompted after lunch to go to his bunk in his room, and I'm sitting there talking to him, and I had the ensign with me, and I don't remember exactly why we got on the topic, but we got on the topic of talking about temples and eternal families and being sealed together. And as we're talking, all of a sudden he gets up and he grabs something from his shelf. Middle of my conversation, he grabs something and leaves. Like, oh, maybe I was talking too much and he just got bored and now he really wants me to leave. And he comes back. I was like, "You okay?" He was like, "Yeah, I just had to get rid of something." I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, honestly, after lunch, I was planning on shooting up, but you followed me into my room, and here we are just talking. And the more you're talking, I just feel terrible about it. So I went and I grabbed the heroin. And I just flushed it down the toilet,
Wow.
and and it was a 50 paper, which means you spent $50 on it, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in there,
It's a lot.
that's like $500. Like you work for 15 cents an hour in there, and it's $50 is an insane amount of money that takes probably 3 or 4 months to get. And he was already in debt, and he just flushed it down the toilet.
Wow.
And he was like, "I'm done, dude. I'm done." He was like, "I just need you to be with me as much as possible." And so I left him that ensign, and it had all the talks from the most previous general conference. And then I woke up the next morning to go ask him about what talk he read, and he got transferred. He got transferred to another facility the
Oh
next
my
morning.
gosh.
And so like I did what I was supposed to do right with him, and he moved on. And then another experience, there was a young kid who came in and got transferred into our pod, about 24 years old, and he was very timid, very shy, and would ask people if he could do things for them so they could pay him with food. And at the time I had a broken hand from basketball. And so he asked me if he could clean my clothes for me because you have to do your own laundry in a bucket of water. And it's kind of a pain when you got a broken wrist. And so just doing it with one hand. And so he offered to do my laundry for me if I would pay him. I was like, yeah, sure. And, and so he would do it. And I would give him his space because I always felt uncomfortable having somebody wash my clothes. But one time I felt really prompted to go and talk with him while he was doing it. And so we're having a conversation, and he ended up telling me his story where he got in trouble. He robbed a place of work because his wife and him just had no money. He got caught, and his lawyer told him he was facing 10 years. So he told his wife that, and his wife freaked out and committed suicide. And then later on, he ended up only getting 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, just terrible, terrible. And he's like, I wish I didn't tell her that because it wasn't final, but I was just venting to her. And so he was like, man, I just hope I get to see her again. And it's funny how almost all these have to do with after this life, like what separates our beliefs from most other faiths is
Yeah.
our belief in the eternal families, right? And so the whole conversation was on that. And then I had another book, Teachings of Joseph Smith, and there's another chapter in there that talks specifically on that. And I earmarked it and I gave it to him and had him read it, and he read it. And he came back to me that night and was like, thanks, can I read the rest of this? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And he was like, okay, cool, I'll give it back when I'm done. And the next morning, he got transferred. And so he had the book, right? And
Yeah.
but again, it's just all these seeds that I was able to plant, by just following those little promptings, right?
I have to ask you, like, you get out of prison and obviously you have a son now, but like, what? Three sons. Okay. So what, like, you get out of prison and then tell me what happens after that.
I get out the next day. My father and we fly back up to Utah because my family moved to Utah while I was there. And so the next day I go up to Utah, and a month later I meet my wife in singles ward. And second date, I tell her everything because we had a really great first date. And I was like, okay, well, if this is really too good, I should probably tell you everything so that you don't like get your hopes up and 6 months later you dump me. Because tell her everything. Like, hey, just so you know, a month and a half ago I was in prison, right, for a hardcore violent crime. And she didn't flinch. And this is a girl who'd never said a cuss word her whole life. And I believe her because I've been married to her for almost 9 years now. I haven't heard it once. Like, she is as clean cut as they come, and I couldn't be more opposite. And she didn't flinch. It drew her closer to me, and against the wishes of her family, in the beginning, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
She chose to stay with me, and then a year and a half later we got married, and we just haven't looked back. Right? Wow. When I left prison and flew from Arizona to Utah, it was like, all right, that's it. Like, I did what I was supposed to do. I'm never even looking back. No pillar of salt stuff. Like, I'm not even tempted to look and see what could have been if I stayed, and I've been blessed for it ever since. We got married in the temple, and like I said, our anniversary is here in March. It'll be 9 years. Have 3 amazing young kids, young boys. Plan to have more. And it's just like, even though it was a huge bump in the road and detour, it's still God, man. He will stick with us as long as we're willing to then choose him, right? There's no second chances. It's chances until you finally choose to do what you're supposed to do. And this was not my plan. Some people are like, oh, God has a plan for all of us. Like, no, don't.
Yeah.
His plan was for not me to do terrible things.
Right.
His plan was for me to, right? Like I don't want to justify anything I did.
Right.
And
but he can work all things to the good, even big mistakes. And it's like, it doesn't erase the pain that you felt. It doesn't erase the pain that your family felt, your parents. I can't even imagine what they went through. It doesn't erase that, but God has a way of using all things for the good.
Yes. His plan for us is to eventually just be back with him. Doesn't matter what it looks like here, as long as we end up choosing him. And that's what I've come to learn. And so and I'm excited to see it in my kids,
Yep.
right? Like every time they make detours, it's like, hey, as long as your foundation is strong, because I never lost my testimony
Right.
doing any of the things that I did. It was always on the back of my mind. I just didn't have the guts
Hmm.
to give up what I was being involved in, and I paid for it.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, it's not that this was his plan for me. No, his plan was for me to be in a covenant keeping life. And I am here now. He just helped me to get back,
Hmm.
right? Because I then chose to do it, even though I was kind of forced to choose.
Hmm.
He really put me in positions to, if I wanted to succeed, I had to follow him, right? And that's where I believe he is in control. Is like, hey, if you want to make it back properly, I'm going to put you in positions to choose me to get out so that you have an undying testimony that it was me who helped you get out of there. And it was. I didn't have to fight one time. I never got hurt. Never, nothing
Yep.
while I was in there. You should have multiple times. But I wasn't. I wasn't touched completely clean. And that was all just 100% because of him, right?
Wow. That is so amazing. Well, Brayden, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This is such an incredible story. Man, thank you.
It's been a good time.
Thank you.
Surf Clothing is one of our favorite brands. They have been supporting us since the very beginning. We love them so much. I think one of the things that I like about Surf so much is that my husband is literally obsessed, and I brought him in here to share his experience with Surf Clothing. So, Jesse, tell us.
I love Surf Clothing. This is the best shirt that I've ever owned for church and professional purposes. It's got four-way stretch, which makes it really nice because not all the time I'm at my desk. Oftentimes I'm moving and out and about. So it's really nice to have a flexible shirt that moves with me. I know that it's got a mesh collar that I love. I think the purpose of that is really to prevent stains, but it's also super comfortable. It's way more comfortable around my neck. You know, if I'm at church or in business meetings with a tie or whether I don't have a tie, it's really comfortable. It's got arm vents, which I love because I'm kind of a bigger fella. It helps me so that I can be a bit breathable, and I love it.
And also, you can get 15% off a shirt from Serve by using the code COMEBACK.
A lot of people have asked us how they can support the podcast, and we have created a Comeback Podcast merch line on our website, www.comebackpodcast.org. All of the money made from the merch goes right back into the podcast. So if you are interested in supporting the podcast and you want to purchase some merch, we would love it. Check it out. Thank you so much for being a supporter of the Comeback Podcast and listening to our episodes. It would mean so much to us if you would like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It helps other people be able to find us, and we want to share this message to everyone.